Donna Petrie. I'm a Programme Manager with the Social Enterprise Academy. We deliver programmes that create social and community impact across Scotland, the UK and the world. And we're here to showcase one of the programmes that we've been delivering, Communities Leading in Tourism. So this is part of a wider Scottish tourism leadership programme delivered by the Academy on behalf of the Scottish Government, on behalf of Highlands and Islands Enterprise, who are the lead agency, South of Scotland Enterprise, Scottish Enterprise and Skills Development Scotland. So a number of partners there. And just a little bit of background and context, we were successful in winning the tender that was put out by Highlands and Islands Enterprise back in 2019. They had an ambition to develop a pilot project for an exciting tourism-focused professional development programme. So we set out to design and deliver a programme that would generate increased capacity and leadership in our communities. And it was developed very much with tourism at its core. So initially there were 3 cohorts that were delivered. That was part of the initial pilot project. And since then we've delivered a further 2. One of them's just about to finish this week. And those 2 were delivered through additional tourism recovery funds from the Scottish Government. So we are going to hear from some of the programme alumni who are going to share a bit about their experience, highlights, the impact on them, themselves individually, their organisations and their communities. I've also got with me today James Hilder. James is an associate facilitator for the Academy, specialising in our leadership and enterprise focused programmes and has facilitated all 5 cohorts so far. James also has his own community-led tourism project, Oakwood Tourism and Crafts, as well as many other hats that he wears within his own community. I'm not sure if we've got Karen. Yes, there's Karen. Karen Tobin's also here. Karen operates Rural Dimensions in Calendar, which is a consultancy specialising in sustainable rural development with a focus on tourism. And Karen has provided the tourism expertise to this programme and has been there alongside James for every cohort. So we're going to hear from Emma Guy of Go Tweed Valley, Russell Fraser, Loch Ness Hub, Diane Smith, Murray Way Association, and Sylvia Jameson, Moravia. And I'll ask Karen and James just to chip in throughout as well and provide additional insights from the programme. So just a little bit of context around our history of the programme delivery to date, and just a bit around what does it actually look like. How does it feel to be on the programme before handing over to our speakers? So we very much believe that the role that communities play in managing and delivering tourism is important. There's significant potential for communities, for revenue generation, jobs, and to support sustainable communities. So we wanted to create an innovative approach to stimulate and accelerate tourism sector development across some of the more remote communities. This programme actually focused initially in Lochaber, Skye, Wester Ross and the Outer Hebrides before expanding across central and southern Scotland. And we've delivered 5 cohorts to date to nearly 80 leaders in their communities, which is fantastic. And really it was meant to be in person to begin with, so it was very much designed to be an in-person programme. Starting and ending with residential weekends. In the middle of the programme, a study tour to Calendar, and then a number of facilitated sessions throughout across the whole 3 months, where participants would complete modules, online learning and attend some evening sessions hearing from international and local speakers sharing their best practice. So we moved the whole programme online and we replicated it all into one digital format. And there's also qualification attached to this programme. So anybody who wanted to pursue this opportunity could also apply for an Institute of Leadership Management endorsed Leadership for Social Enterprise. So that's the context, that's the background of this programme. And I think we'll just go to each of the participants who've gone through the programme and just ask you to introduce yourself, your organisation, and just first of all share your personal experience of the programme and any highlights. So who'd like to jump in? Or I'm just going to pick. Diane, I'm going to come to you first.
Hi, I come from the Murray Way Association, and we manage the Murray Walking and Outdoor Festival and also promote Murray's long distance walking route, the Murray Way. And I attended the course almost this time last year, a wee bit more than this time last year. And for me, it was a complete eye-opener. I didn't realise the importance of community tourism at all. I didn't realise its value. I didn't know it was a thing that visitors were actively looking for. I didn't know that there was many international organisations doing this. I didn't know that at all that it was recognised internationally. So, and also the festival, that our product was actually something that was very much what community tourism was about, that it was providing authentic experiences run by local experts and showing the very best of Murray. So I was completely delighted that I was doing something without, not realising that its importance. So that's sort of the background to my first kind of experience has been on the course, I suppose. And I suppose from that, like myself, many other community groups don't come from a tourism background. We often do the work in our spare time. So the most inspiring thing for me was learning from others what could be achieved. Realising that we had a great product that was of a really good high quality, but it took listening to others to realise this, and giving the confidence to now be able to sell that back to people.
Thanks, Dan. That's great. Any comments, or do you want to jump in at any point? Feel free. I'm trying and keep an eye out on the chat as well as we go through. Oh, James, you're on mute.
I was going to say, for those that arrived late, I realised that quite a lot of us know one another and have been part of the programme. So we're taking this as an opportunity to really just showcase what the programme was all about. We don't have anyone here who's not been on the programme other than people that are attached to the delivery of today's workshop. So actually, I know there's other people here that probably got other experiences they'd like to share. So we won't let Russell, Emma and Diane hog the limelight, just in case everyone else has got stuff to put in. So that's my comment. Thanks for sharing that, Diane.
Yeah. Great. Russell, can I come to you next then? Highlights.
Hi. Yeah, now that I can get the opportunity to put James back on mute and hog the limelight here. Highlights are quite extensive for me. The CLT program, in the previous presentation talking about the Communities Leading on Tourism course, indicated that I didn't think it was ever going to be able to emphasize on any evaluation form the value that the CLT course brought in terms of the bringing together of everyone from like-minded and equal situations, trying to understand not only what community tourism was all about, but also the peer-to-peer learning was absolutely invaluable. That's obviously led on to other things, but I will try and catch the limelight again at a later stage on that. For those that don't know me, I'm manager of Loch Ness Hub in Drumnadrochit. Loch Ness Hub came about following a community consultation. Long story short, the overwhelmingly backed the taking over of the former Tourist Information Centre, which Visit Scotland had given up and was a Highland Council building. We gained the funds to buy the building, and then went on to launch a community share offer, which again the community backed, with 75% of the total investment coming from the local community, totaling 110,000. And the reason I mention that is trying to get the community to understand how the face of tourism was changing. I don't think I'd have been able to do that without the Communities Leading in Tourism course. There's a whole load of buzzwords floating around, from slow tourism, sustainable tourism, experiencing real, and all those kind of aspects, but what do they actually mean when you're on the ground? And I think it probably made me stop and think, well, how are we going to achieve that? It was quite easy to say slow and responsible tourism, but in terms of changing the face of a destination, which was predominantly known for being a fluffy green monster, mythical monster, whatever you want to call it, was it going to be a bit of a challenge? And to be fair, it's maybe something that we're never going to change overall. But what we can do is encourage those that are coming to visit piles of old stones in the shape of Uckert Castle and looking for a monster in Loch Ness, that there's a whole host of other things on the doorstep. And I think the CLT course made all of us kind of think about that. And again, I had said previously in another presentation that the CLT course provided the confidence, I think, to go and talk to others, be that boards of directors or local community businesses, and get them to start to think about providing bike storage at their B&B, how they're promoting the area, and getting them to think about their food experiences and all those kind of aspects. So we're never going to do it as standalone individuals, but collectively, then perhaps we can make that difference and change, and perhaps encourage the community to embrace community tourism again. I think it was always embraced because it provided so much local employment, but embrace it in a different way of as we said on the course, treating everyone as a visitor to the area rather than a tourist. And there is a difference. Speaking to people, telling them a little bit about yourself, engaging with them rather than that conveyor belt. I think people will go then back home and hopefully share their experience and the people they've met, and want then others to come and visit us. So I think that's probably about enough from me for now. I'm quite happy to add to that at a later stage, Donna, but I'll hand over to yourself and Emma now.
Great. Thanks, Russell. Thanks very much for that introduction around yourself, your organisation, and your experience so far. I think there's definitely some key points there to pick up on around getting the buy-in from the community. Visitor versus tourist, that'd be interesting to come back to as well. Emma, I can invite you to introduce yourself and share your key highlights of the programme.
Thanks, Donna. So my name's Emma Guy, and I'm working with Scotto on the Scottish Tourism Project, which I know most of you are familiar with. Before that, I was with the Tweed Valley Tourism Improvement District, so that's a tourism bid in the Scottish borders, and I guess that's kind of where my kind of interest in community tourism was stimulated, because although it's a business improvement district and working with kind of regular businesses, if you like, I kept coming across community organisations that were doing important things in the area that contributed to the tourism kind of package. So you know, it kind of left me in a bit of a kind of position where I was like, well, these organisations need to be part of that kind of tourism mix. And then I saw the advert for the course online, and it just really intrigued me. So yeah, went on the course, got loads out of it, loads of learning, connecting with people. I mean, I think the fact it was online meant, you know, we had people from all over the country, Shetland, West Coast, East Coast, and that was really useful to understand what was possible and what other people were doing. So it's still, I'm still learning about community tourism, and there is this, you know, it just comes in so many different shapes and sizes. And I guess for me, in you know, where I live, we don't have a lot of community tourism organisations, and I think it's kind of planted a seed doing the course, and you know, speaking to different businesses and you know, individuals that are interested in that kind of side of it, and just, you know, trying to connect them with other people and support organisations in my area that are doing community tourism initiatives, and just, you know, letting them see what is possible, sharing examples. The East Haven Together project on their kind of art gallery in the toilets, I shared that locally, and there was lots of interest with that. So some great examples, and I think, you know, going back to what you were saying, Donna, about the significant potential, especially in a rural area, for community tourism, and that's something that I would really like my area to kind of embrace. I also work with a private business, and you know, sort of trying to incorporate the community tourism element into, you know, it's kind of events that they do, and kind of open that door to community tourism, to get to partner with kind of private companies, and I think that, especially after COVID, you know, people are a lot more aware of the value of community, so it's a good time to maybe make that connection and encourage community tourism organisations. Thanks.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks. That was really helpful to get that introduction from yourself, and interesting to hear around that partnership potential that you've started to think about, and that you're talking about there, and sharing and supporting other community tourism projects and initiatives. Again, that's probably something we'll come back to. Sylvia, can I ask you to introduce yourself and yeah, give us your key highlights from the programme.
Hello, I did prepare a presentation, but I have to prepare it anyway, as James and Karen will know, for Saturday. So I can keep it for Saturday, or I can use it today, and then they can pretend they've never seen it before. So it's entirely up to you. But I started at Moravia on the 1st of October, and an interview got asked, as you always do, what your weak points are. And my background's community learning and development and project management, and I can do it in my sleep. But tourism and marketing and retail and visitor trains was a whole new area to me, and I was very honest and said that was my gap. Where I couldn't manage, then I'm mostly funded through HIE, and they recommended this course, and that's how I came to be on it, and it has been massively helpful. Partly the networking and pinching ideas for other areas, international as well as local, but also it's shown me the gaps in my thinking and my planning, and the board's thinking and planning ahead for the future. I'm in a 2-year post, and ultimately my role is to work towards a new interactive visitor centre, and we've changed our thinking because of this course. We've kind of opened up a bit more. We always had the community built in. Sorry, I'm from Moravia, Moravia. We're an Air Heritage Visitor Centre in Kinloss in Moray. Sorry, Angus, person in Angus, I couldn't see your name. We were very much looking at a visitor centre that was embedded in the community, involved community groups, maybe as tenants to help the building be sustainable. We sit beside a big 300 house housing estate. A lot of inequality needs that we would build into our centre. But you made me think about Kinloss is a tourist destination, and negotiating and working with businesses about day trips to Kinloss, about speaking to Fiona that's on this call for Lossy Community Development Trust about a air heritage trail for Lossiemouth to Kinloss, about Macamera where Scottish Aviation Museums Group and an aviation trail. So the kind of fitting into a bigger landscape, and also how I thought we were quite good online and on social media and digital, and we're actually dismal. So that's been and it's not my favourite thing, but it's really opened my eyes. I think somebody said in the course, I think it was maybe the guy at the Celtic Colours Festival in Canada, think of yourself as a social media company. And I've totally changed my mindset, and we're actually looking for funding for admin and IT, digital marketing, part-time person, because so many people 5 miles from Moravia have no idea it's here, never mind 500, and we are missing such a trick. So that's been massively connect with businesses, the IT, techie, digital stuff, and make partnerships much wider than just the ones that I already knew. So that's kind of been my key learning. A marketing plan into my plans for a strategic plan. I just thought everybody knew who we were, but.
And I promise I didn't write Sylvia's script, because I think if you had to sum up what this program can do in one speaker, I think Sylvia's just encapsulated it. I'm not dissing Russell's presentation, but but that if it nourishes you personally in what your skill set is, and then you can apply that, and it's making you think broadly, more broadly about what where you fit, because so many people on the program are from individual community organizations, a few, as in Norma's case, from a tourism cooperative or from a sort of regional grouping, if it makes you think big, gets more collaboration, that's what this was aimed at. And Karen would be able to speak to that, because she was part of the early design of the course. But that was a really good advert. Thank you, Sylvia.
That's okay. And I just want to quickly add, James, and I've mentioned this before, the saying you told was in the first session about if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Because the first time I heard it, I thought, James has just summed up my career. I do everything 100 miles an hour, and I also have to remember to bring people along and slow down and bring them with me and alongside the vision. So as I said to James earlier, I have it on my wall to remind me to slow down and bring people along with me. So that was a very minor thing, but very helpful.
Not my quote, African proverb.
African,
anyway,
yes.
Sorry, Donna, I'm taking over your show.
All right, not at all. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sylvia. That's really, really interesting. And yeah, I think just echoing what James said, that your summary of how the program's impacted in your highlights, showing you gaps and helping to change thinking and mindsets. We couldn't ask for more. Perfect. I mean, Karen, maybe is there any comments you've got at this point? Bring you in here. Anything you'd like to add from what you've heard?
Yeah, I think a very significant thing was that we started this programme as a face-to-face programme, ran the first cohort from start to finish, and a week later the country went into lockdown, and it worked very well face-to-face. And I think, James, I think you'd agree that when the suggestion was, can we take this online, there was a bit of trepidation. Can we? Because it's all about the face-to-face. Well, when I say face-to-face, it's the peer-to-peer really. It's about the conversations. And I think that's what I've been personally very taken by, is how the online version has worked, and how the networking hasn't stopped at the end of each cohort, it's continued beyond it. And also the international examples of what's happening elsewhere in the world, how you can, sometimes you look at international and you come up with all the reasons why, well, that's all very well for them, but that wouldn't work here. Whereas there's something about community tourism where there is so much to learn from overseas, and it's less about fiscal models and how you run your country and everything else. It's much more about the actual how they've done it, how they've used people, how they've worked with people in the local communities to deliver what they've done. And it's interesting, Sylvia, you mentioned the Celtic colours, because we had them with us last week talking about what they're doing out in Canada. And, you know, it was that reminder that what they're doing is phenomenal, but they started small. And it's that sense of what a community can achieve. It's maybe a similar analogy, Sylvia, to what you were saying about going fast alone. But you know, as you start small and grow, you don't become these things overnight. It's how you grow, and it's the relationships that allow you to do that. So just a few observations there, Donna.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karen. Would anybody else like to pitch in at all, or any comments?
No, there's one or two folk who've been on the programme or are on the programme, whether you've got any particular highlights or things you've enjoyed that you'd like to throw into the mix as you're here. Fiona hasn't quite finished. Norma's been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Yeah, I think it's nice seeing the people that have connected with since seen them on screen. I think that happened yesterday with Diane. There's been so many people and so many different things over this past while that we've been able to connect with or support, or you know, and it is about what everybody said encapsulated in this. It's just the shared learning and what you do with it. But one of the things that I wrote down in my constant writing of notes, busting the lingo, I think Russell said, and also Diane was saying the confidence to sell it. You know, it's an interesting one, that trying to get that language. You know, how do you get the message across that to tell people like they're already doing it? There's loads of examples out there of people that have been doing it for decades. Yeah, so it's been really good this week, catching up again with some of the other cohorts, and yeah, so thank you to Send Scotland, the other community enterprise one, for pulling this together so quickly, and have been able to dip into some of them, but it's been good, the ones that we've been able to get into. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And if anybody wants to ask about a 2 hour, you know, you were talking about working with different countries. We're hoping to go out to Belgium again for a final workshop with our community-led tourism project between Belgium and Romania and Scotland, which had to come to an end due to Brexit on our part. But we're going over there at the beginning of May for final workshops, and to pull together a report of all the different destinations. So Angus and Scotland as a whole will be featured in that. So that'll be good. So to get the European slant on there.
Brilliant. No, yeah, James is offering his services as a facilitator.
Yes, there's still space, but a lot of the time, James, because there's no leader funding, we are paying our way. So yeah, so yeah, there you go.
If you can afford the flight, James, you can go. Brilliant. That sounds like really exciting stuff, Norma. I'm sure you're dead tough to be able to take that forward again. Thank you. Fiona, did you have anything you wanted to share at this point at all?
I've really enjoyed the course. I'm one of the ones that's still on the course at the moment, sitting doing my presentation for tomorrow. Not finished yet. But again, I'm like Sylvia, I don't have a tourism background, and I'm in a development trust, and we took on the local business association splintered because they really needed to do something about tourism, and it was easier for them to join us, to get support, and also we could do funding for them. And you know, it's in its infancy, and it's been really quite interesting. The bits that we've already done have come up in the course, and I've learned so much more that I can now feed back to the rest of them. So my presentation's got to do them at the end of the month as well, so that they can see what I've done, because I'm a paid employee, so I had time to come on the course. They said, you know, the fact you were sitting at 10 o'clock at night doing your homework was immaterial, you know. But it's been really good and really made me think, and the quizzes and things about your own personality have been quite, I didn't expect to be where I was in some of them. So that's been good too, and given me lots of ideas of where I need to polish up my skills probably. But no, James and Karen have given us a super course.
Thank you, Fiona. Thanks for sharing it, and I'm sure tomorrow will go splendidly. So yeah, maybe we were going to talk about and ask you to share how has the programme, you know, really impacted on you individually and your organisation and the wider community. What can you share with us about the impact of the programme? I'll just invite you to jump in, or Diane, I'm going to go straight to you again.
Yeah, I suppose carrying on from the confidence area, it's been able me to support the other walking festivals in Scotland, and we've had a couple of meetings. There's about 11 of them, and one of their key themes that they were having an issue was being acknowledged by the sector. So we've been able to have a meeting where we were able to engage somebody from Visit Scotland to come along and listen to them and their issues. So, you know, that was one thing. I've also started attending local tourism meetings and hoping to take more of an active part there as well. And now, as we've all been talking about, now making connections between the different members that have been on the course. I've been to see Russell and learn about baggage transfers. I'm hoping to meet Sylvia and maybe look at a trail, aviation trail within Moray. I've met Kathy Lowe at Findhorn, who runs a motorhome stopover, and she's been helping me with ideas about funding. So it's really sort of keep learning from the people that have been on the course. And then it's given me personally a bit of a push to leave my day-to-day job working in the arts and see how I can develop and work with the Moray Way and see what else we can do with the organisation, and of course now working with Scotto as well. So I suppose ultimately it's changed my career path.
Wow, that's certainly transformational then. Goodness, does that feel scary or is that feeling good?
A little bit happens on the 1st of April, so.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you've got a great peer support around you as well,
yeah,
encouraging you and supporting you.
And I was going to say, I think that's what's been an eye-opener about the community tourism, in that there's not really a competitiveness. There's very much a kind of ideal of supporting each other, which I've never really had in any other sector before. So that's been really interesting.
I think that's a really good point, because I think that's one of the big things for me, is just that openness and willingness to share experience and information. I was at a business meeting with kind of normal businesses last night, and the difference was quite stark. Really, you know, quite closed, quite competitive. When working together would make things so much easier, but there's just not that. It just didn't seem to be that mindset. Whereas, you know, all the connections that I've had, particularly through Scotto and speaking to and connecting with a lot of community tourism organisations, they've all been so generous with their information and their time, and I think that gives that kind of sector such an advantage, because by sharing information, you know, it can progress so much more and have a much richer product, I think, for the visitor, because of that.
I think just to add to that, I think, you know, what you're describing is a feature of the social enterprise sector per se as well, but obviously the local level, there's that cohesiveness that comes from what can we do to help our community. But I mean, I remember when Scott was just starting out, being in a meeting with Lawrence DeMarco in a meeting of the Scottish government before its inception, and you know, it was about trying to capitalise on the fact that social enterprises do work together, I think, in a way that's quite different to private enterprise, and that's the beauty of the networks in all their various shapes and guises, whether they're a trade body like the Development Trust Association, whether it's like Scotto that's come about as a result of this programme, or the individual thematic networks that Scott has. To me, it's just about trying to create as many opportunities as possible for people to share, because when we do take the time to share, good stuff happens. I think, yes, it's very evident in communities leading in tourism or community tourism initiatives, but it's also a feature of generally of social enterprise. Maybe some of the big nationals might be a little bit commercially competitive because they may be pitching for work, but I would say 95% of social enterprises are very supportive of each other. And that's what, you know, it's great to see, you know, that Scotto has evolved and can be part of this as a place where people who've got a real community tourism interest can really get straight to the heart of the matter. So it's exciting, but yeah, it is a wider feature. Sorry, Emma, cut across you.
No, that's fine. But yeah, I think it's breaking that through to the mainstream as well. So it's being able to, you know, people that don't have that experience of community tourism, but maybe share the same values as well. You know, I used to run a business, and when I like, you know, 10, 11 years ago, but when I look back, I think we had those social enterprise values, but I didn't know what a social enterprise was. I didn't know how you could set it up. And then I think if I had known, then maybe I would have set that business up differently. So I think it is trying to break that through to the mainstream, to get people to understand what community tourism is, which is a challenge, because, you know, we've had lots of conversations about trying to define what that is, and you know, I don't think there's a single definition. So it's trying to get that message across to those types of consumers, which I think there are more and more. And again, that's what we're trying to do with Scotto, is have that visitor facing sort of offering, so that people can easily at least experience community tourism and then start to kind of get it. So.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for sharing that, and yeah, that challenge of getting people to understand what community tourism is. That's hopefully something that we can continue to address. Russell, would you like to come back in and yeah, just talk about the impact the program's had on you, your organisation, your community, specifically?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, well, probably maybe repeating some of the things that we said earlier by Sylvia and the likes, but thinking back to the course and when we talked about different ideas of how we were going to, as I touched on already, actually putting community tourism on the ground, what it was going to look like. There was a number of aspects to that. As part of our remit and our funding was that we were also a community transport hub. So the big challenge for me was always trying to combine tourism and community together. I said in the chat that like many of the others, my background was very much in community, being at the forefront of various organizations, but not in tourism, other than the odd spell in bar work or whatever. But you're born and bred in the shores of Loch Ness. Tourism's kind of almost just part of growing up. But but not actually working in the sector. So I probably should have said, and I did mention in the chat, that it led to a career change for me, because I went on to become the manager of Loch Ness Hub. I wasn't manager when I started doing the CLT course. So having been self-employed for 20 years, and then moving into a paid employment in tourism on my doorstep, not having to travel, work on the doorstep a mile from the house, you know, there's probably no greater impact on that. And I'm not going to try and massage James and Karen's egos, because they're big enough, but they and seriously, I don't think I could have achieved half of what I've done within the hub if it wasn't for James and Karen's leadership and what they taught us throughout the program, and all the various speakers, but more so that, you know, that as much as anything, the peer-to-peer learning that went along with that. It's easy to talk all these things, but what does it actually mean? Well, I engaged with some of our local artisans and put in a local craft trail. It's probably just worth saying for the sake of the recording, in case this is shown in 5 years' time, but this was all happening in the course of COVID. So when not to try and start something, really, that would be the time not to do it, but we charged ahead anyway. And in some ways it was a good thing, because it allowed us to find our feet. And I'm delighted that the craft trail actually got off the ground. Although we kind of initiated it, others have now run with it, and it means that there's a sustainability to it, and there'll be a legacy to it as the years go on. So it's not always about having to keep doing all these things ourselves. I think that's where I've always faltered in the past. A community level was trying to do everything, and it's just not possible to do that in the tourism stroke community environment. But it also gives the confidence to, there was a lot of talk during the CLT course about local DMOs, and I have to say that I was a little bit scared of them, and they seemed like the big picture and how approachable they were going to be. But again, I'm pleased to say that we now have a regular meeting with our local DMO to try and develop some aspects of marketing the area in a different way. We do sit on the crossroads of 3 of the long distance trails, the Loch Ness 360, Great Glen Way and African Tailway, and there's really been very little done in marketing terms for that. So, but again, having the confidence to go and speak to these guys and put a little bit of pressure on them to say, what are you doing, knowing that the answer to that is nothing. It just allows you to sort of move the goalpost a little bit and give you that voice as a community. Also approaching the local councillors to say, who's doing this, why is nobody doing that? So we've also got a collaborative project with Forestry Land Scotland and Scottish, sorry, I always forget their new titles at Woodland Trust Scotland. I think they are now. They seem to change their name almost as regularly as SSE. But so we've done a collaborative project with them in terms of new signposting in the village. And that's just underway at the moment. Again, the community element, how it would benefit them. Part of our hub is also that transport hub element I touched on earlier, and e-bikes. But rather than just being e-bike hire, we worked with a local social enterprise company in the shape of Soribus to provide community trials for e-bikes. So there's a 6-month to 12-month period where they can, community gets a loan of an e-bike just to trial it with a view that they might go and buy their own, i.e. sustainable transport and those kind of elements. But that's not something we would be able to do if we weren't tying the two together. So the funding is out there for the community trials. And then once the community trials are finished, the bikes come back into the hub and they go into our hire fleet. So just some examples of where it got to, but that's, again, I'm hogging, so I will shut up. I hope that helps, Donna.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. Really, really interesting, and just hearing about how you're developing your relationships with your local DMO and your counsellors, and then those other organisations that you're partnering with. And again, that feels like something that really coming from this programme as being really critical and really good key learning for everybody. Thank you. Sylvia, is there anything that you're obviously still going through the programme, but has there been any impact that you've identified yet for yourself, your organisation, community?
I've got, if I can get it to work, Donna, I've got 2 photos that will maybe illustrate, but tech is not my thing, so I'll share screen and then tell me if you see a photo coming up in a minute.
There's something coming. Yes.
A photo of Bairns. Can you see this? I've got 2 photos that illustrate very practically. This was the 12th of March, Kinloss Families Day, fully funded through the Community Council. It was a sneaky wire west on community engagement about Kinloss, what's missing for Kinloss, what do you like about Kinloss and what's needed. And this family, this is all one family here for the Southside Estate. So this would be a family, we got permission to use the photo, that there's a huge lack of facilities and things for young people in Kinloss, so we were able to engage with a lot of families at this event to find out what they need and what's missing. And this was kind of, for me, the course was this bit of a light bulb moment that actually people like this are co-creators of our future. They are helping us design the new hub and visitor centre, because Bairns this age tell you very straight what they need and what they want, and how we can relate that to STEM and to our heritage. So this was a very practical thing. You can see the post-it stickies and pens of you were helping us to do the engagement on that day by getting us to think about them, not as just neighbours, but actually co-producers. So that's photo 1, and I'm going to try and share another one. I'll have to do it separately because I'm not very good at this. This photo is for yesterday, so very timeless. The building in the background, we got 25k for HIE a couple of weeks ago. Things happen very quickly here. And we have a very good partnership with the 39 Engineer Regiment across the road, and borrowed some guys yesterday to help us put the structure up. And what we've done inside, you can just see the HO helicopter, is I've convinced them at Moravia that voluntourism, that Tick and Perton things, experiential tourism is a huge thing of the future. People don't want to just look, they want to have a go. And one of the things we're doing inside here is putting a viewing gallery in so they can see craft at work, the guys building and repairing, but also a life-size model Spitfire you can have a go and put a rivet in. And that change in face of tourism happened very, very quickly because of this course. We got the money, the shade is up, there's a partnership that's helped to do that, and people will get more experiential. I think the phrase, I did write it down, was experiential gifting was one of the things that was mentioned, but that curious traveller, why, how does it work, can I have a go? So this is it actually happening, and they're finished putting it up this morning. So I thought photos would say it better than me.
That's amazing, Sylvia. That's absolutely brilliant. Great photos, great stories. I love the term that young people are co-creators of the future. That's fantastic. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments? Want to add anything there?
I think that's brilliant, because putting rivets in a plane is what my partner does for a living. So, so you might be changing somebody's idea of what they want to do in the future if they have a go at doing that.
Anybody else? Any comments on what you've heard?
I think, Donna, there's a really, the experiential gifting kind of idea, that just, you know, gifting someone an experience that they can only have with you, in your community. It's that real point of differentiation, all the stuff we talk about in the programme, but it's a very real example of it, Sylvia. And given the kind of what Moravia is all about, it's made for this kind of thing.
Thanks, Karen.
We've got in the Tweed Valley where I live, we've got like a Trails Association, which is a charity, a volunteer organisation, and mountain biking is really big in the valley. So there's a good community that live here that ride bikes, but also we get a lot of visitors as well. So they have kind of dig days and repair days for to keep a lot of the trails are kind of hand built, so it's to keep the trails in tip top condition. So that's been really successful. And actually after after Storm Arwen, a lot of the trails were impacted by fallen trees, and there was quite a lot of devastation actually. And it did really, because the forestry basically closed all the forests, so that had a real knock-on effect to businesses, to all businesses. So the Trails Association went out, moved what they could and cut what they could by hand. They weren't allowed to use chainsaws in the forests, but they did a huge amount of work, and a lot of people that came to visit actually got involved as well, and they had a fundraising campaign around fixing the trails up, and they raised a huge amount of money for the charity to kind of enable it. The trails are a great tourism infrastructure for the area, and it was really good to see that kind of input of volunteers, but supported by visitors. They wanted to either physically help, or they wanted to donate money to enable that work to be carried out, and it had a real unifying effect with that group of volunteers, visitors, but also local businesses who appreciated that then they could open because people would come. So
fantastic. That's great, Emma. Thanks. I've just gone to Sarah's question. Sarah, we've got a few minutes left. Is this something we'll have a chat about this? If anybody's got some points they'd like to raise, or put it in the chat, how would you like to end this session?
Yeah, it's been really interesting hearing from you all and hearing about everything that you're doing. But I guess as we move forward and we're in conversation with the Scottish Tourism Alliance, and we're moving beyond the current action plan that they have, what would our asks be for the national agencies? What would our asks be for supporting yourselves, but supporting others as well? Because obviously this course, I'm hearing that this course really has opened a door for a lot of you and spurred you on. But what else could be done to support other communities to take the bold step of taking that leadership role in their communities around tourism, and what would help you going forward as well? They're quite big questions, but I guess I'm looking for some overarching themes, kind of ideas about the direction of travel, really.
Sarah, can I jump in and immediately declare a vested interest? But the whole concept of Scotto was that it would provide a legacy to the CLT course. So I think, to answer your question, for not so much us, but for anyone else out there, the next ones that are going to have a change of career path, is that funding is sought to keep the Communities Leading Tourism course going, so that we keep the network building, and certainly from a Scottish community tourism perspective, we would like to see people join us. We have regular gatherings, the next of which is this evening. For anyone that hasn't already signed up, you're all very welcome. But seriously, I think for community-led tourism to not only be sustainable, but build on all the building blocks that have been put in place from the course, providing that legacy and continuing to keep going. That's the message I would like to get put back to others.
I think I would kind of, following on from that, just the, Sarah, the recognition that community tourism does have a real role to play, but it needs support, because there's so many positive benefits to community-led tourism in particular, that but it needs that support. So community tourism does so much more than just deliver a tourism product, and I think that needs to be recognised. And sorry, that needs to be recognised and kind of taken forward. Because it's not just about selling a product, and in a lot of ways, I think community tourism has the potential to it's already doing it, solve a lot of the issues that we see in visitor destinations around visitor management. And Kathy's example of the Findhome motorhome air is a fantastic example of that. But communities need support, in terms of their training, which something like the course does offer, but also in terms of financial support to enable them to do that. So I think that's the two things that I would like, the STA to recognise.
Thanks, Emma. Norma, did you have your hand up that you wanted?
Yeah, and then it totally went out of my head what I was about to say, but then I remembered again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about how they recognise how the value and the social impact, because a lot of these things are really difficult to measure. And when you're working with DMOs and local authorities and people who might be giving you funding, it's a lot of the things are down to well, how many heads on beds is that going to translate into, et cetera, but that's not what it's all about. It's about the community. And I know there's been things on community wealth building, and it's interesting that when we are going back to Belgium this time, we're not just talking about the community-led tourism part, we're talking about the whole of the, what's happening in communities in general now, because there's different changes in the world since we started the project way back when in 2018. So I think it is that difficult conversations that are sometimes had. I sit in meetings and I sit around, Zoom screens, unfortunately, a lot of the time, because people are not being able to get out into the communities yet. And I think I'm lucky, I'm very fortunate that I'm on the ground and being able to connect with businesses and local community organisations. And what we're finding as a tourism cooperative is that community organisations are coming to us rather than going to, say, Visit Angus or Angus Council. And believe me, there are many, many good people in Visit Angus and Angus Council, but it's almost like they're invisible at the moment because they're not getting out into their, or I don't know if they ever will get out into communities again, because they don't have, there's a huge lack of capacity staffing wise and resource wise. And what we're finding is that if they don't have the resource, sometimes there are small pots of funding that we're hopefully going to be able to access to deliver projects that possibly they could or should have, but they're being delivered in the community. So it's an interesting way forward. And as I say, I'm happy to share anything with anybody that wants to know about what's happening here and whether they can pick up anything from that, because I certainly pick up plenty from you guys. So quite happy to share what's happening here.
Thanks, Norma. Thanks very much for that.
Can I just? I would just be interested, Sarah. What's your take on it? You've been at Scott for a long time and obviously got lots of experience, and where we're at now in terms of community tourism. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Obviously, this has been a part of my work for the past 10 years, and we've done an awful lot. It's only been funded really in the past couple of years, the work that we've been doing. We've had the Tourism Social Enterprise Network, but this work goes far beyond social enterprises, because community is everybody, it's not just social enterprises. And I think that we are at quite an interesting stage. So somebody pointed out yesterday that we'd now named it So it's now community-led tourism, and it's recognised as community-led tourism. And now that it has a name, it feels like it's gathering momentum. And I think that, apologies, I've got Teams blinking away in the background, switch that off. I think that actually the next stage, I would say, and sadly we're not going to be part of that because we've been defunded, and we'll finish at the end of June, but I think the next stage that has to happen now is that there has to be a shift in attitude within the national agencies. So it's all very well them funding courses, that's fantastic. You've done a fantastic course, you've been part of that, you've developed a relationship, but it goes far beyond that. And they hold the purse strings, and they are at the top tables, and there currently isn't any representation for community within the STARG, within the Tourism Task Force. There isn't proper representation for community within government anymore, because obviously tourism has been moved back into the economic side of things, away from communities. So there has been a whole shift that isn't really helping our case. We've got a really great working relationship with the tourism team in government, and we also have a great working relationship with the communities team in government, who have been the ones that have been supporting this event and are supporting the wider scoping study that we're carrying out. And I think we need to take advantage of that and use those contacts to try and start to make that strategic shift and change, because what I hear from those national players is that they want to open the door, that they want communities to be involved, but wanting isn't really good enough anymore, in my opinion. I think we've given them leeway while COVID was happening, but we're now a long way in, and it's time for the leeway to stop, actually, and communities deserve a voice at the table. So in the next few months before I leave, that will be my big fight, really. I want tomorrow's finale to be a positive. I want to go there solution focused, and as very much to look at how we can work, because as I say, they want to work with communities. They don't know how. They don't need to reinvent the community sector, it already exists. What we need to do is make that relationship as easy as possible, so that communities can have that direct relationship and can have that influence and can bring something positive to the table. So we're moving away from the angry moaning and very much into solution focused, positive, how can we make this happen? And I guess, yeah, so that's kind of where my focus is at the moment, is the national. But I think for communities themselves, there's going to be a fight on for a good while. Somebody mentioned there that, you know, the relationships at a local level, and that definitely is an issue I see across the country. It's a bit of a postcode lottery. Depends on what support you get from who. You might have a great relationship with High, or you might have a great relationship with the new SOSI, and that's a fantastic thing, you know, that opens doors for you. But if you don't have that relationship, if you're not seen as an area for potential economic growth, then how do you get a seat at the table, and how do you develop those relationships? I could go on for hours.
I think, Donna, there's something that bridges there between, Sarah, what you're saying and what Norma was saying, is that the government and agencies, yes, but the DMOs, the actual tourism industry, doesn't understand community-led tourism yet. A lot profess that they do, but I'm not convinced they do, having been part of this programme and feeling that I've got a foot in both camps, that there's something really powerful here that is not understood by either the agencies or the industry. And it's a bold thing to say, but I do agree with Sarah that there's a need to educate here, and they don't want to be educated. They think they know what it's all about and what needs to happen, and we need to come to their table. And I think is this shift thing that we're talking about here.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah. I think there's definitely lots of conversations to be had, aware that we're over time, and I know that there's another session starting very shortly. So I am just going to wrap things up. Thanks so much for everybody for joining, for participating, sharing your insights, your comments and your hopes for the future, and hopefully see many of you at tomorrow's final session as well.